Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Thursday, June 19th, 2025. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. This podcast covers the national champions. Great show for you today. The Dean, Bill Kurelic, is here. The Grand Poobah, Mark Porter, is here. Camp season at Ohio State is over. If you ever needed a day to know that recruiting has gotten even screwier than it was in the past, today's that day, and you will see just why. But before we do that, I got to let you know about Factor Meals, one of our best sponsors. Summer is here. That means more sun and more light, more time to do things that make summer so special. The number one thing you don't want to be doing all summer is spending hours cooking inside, and that's where Factor comes in. Chef created, chef crafted, dietitian approved meals ready in just 2 minutes, taking the hassle out of eating well. They arrive fresh and ready to eat, perfect for any active lifestyle over summer and beyond. And you get plenty of choices, 45 weekly menu options, gourmet meals that fit your summer gains and goals. Get that bikini bod rocking. Choose from options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, and more. My family loves these. My kids just asked me the other day to get some more. Get started at factormeals.com/Bucknuts50 off and use code Bucknuts50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code Bucknuts50 off at factormeals.com/Bucknuts50 off. Two guys that never come at a discount, Mark Porter and Bill Kurelic. Camp season is over, theoretically, Bill. Well, not even theoretically, it's over. And that means no more drama on the recruiting front, right? Everything's just going to go super smoothly, completely according to plan, just like recruiting always does. So let's start with a layup. That's a stretch. But let's get the pipeline hooked up here. Cincere Johnson, linebacker or defensive end, depending who you speak to, is committing quite soon, Bill, and your crystal ball has been on the good guys for a while. Bring us up to speed on everything Cincere Johnson from Glenville, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, he is supposed to announce at noon today. He made official visits to Ohio State, as well as Alabama, Penn State. I've really thought that, I crystal balled him to Ohio State, I think it was late November. In fact, I'm virtually sure of that. And really nothing's happened that would change my thinking on that. I still like the Buckeyes for him to announce when he announces this afternoon, again at noon. I still like the Buckeyes in that one.
Has it ever really been a question? I know we've had little talk about the pipeline because of J.J. Perez, his classmate, is verbally committed to Florida, but I never really felt Cincere was outside the purview. Mark, is he a defensive end or is he a middle linebacker?
Well, he's a middle linebacker. Arvell Reese is more of a defensive end than Cincere ever was because Arvell's got the length. And I think Arvell is your answer why this is such an easy decision is your starting linebacker right now is from Glenville, coached by the same guy, Maury Norris, that coached Arvell and Cincere Johnson. So there's a natural progression at Glenville and Ohio State. So maybe in a couple of years, you see another Glenville guy step into those shoes. Cincere, we talked about this before, started off a little thicker. And he had the lower body when he was younger that you thought, oh, this kid may grow into. That hasn't happened. I mean, he has fought it and worked against it and trained against it. And, you watch him doing those drills. And when you talk about a run-stopping linebacker between the tackles, that's what you bought. You didn't go buy the Atkinson kid or someone who flies around the field and has that skill set. That's a different position for what you're going to need between the tackles. And I'd venture to say that you'd probably want Cincere in there between the guards and tackles more than an Atkinson, just based on the body
definitely.
style. Okay. And we think Atkinson is the best player we've ever seen in a way, the way that's a little bit of hyperbole or whatever, but he's definitely an apex predator. So Cincere will be fine in between the tackles. He will serve his purpose and be a great linebacker. His brother, Freddie Johnson, was a 350-pounder. And that really said, wow, if your brother looks like that, you could end up looking like that. And so there were a lot of tea leaves that we were reading early on that Cincere has, to his credit, really worked hard against. So let's see how this works out, but I'll slide some chips on the linebacker.
Get the pipeline hooked up again, and don't sleep on the pipeline. We tend to take things for granted here at Ohio State after a while. The Glenville pipeline is a big reason for the success they've had. You'd be hard-pressed to find a team that didn't have a Glenville guy as a key contributor over the last 2 decades. We're getting to that point now because we're old. 2 decades ago, I was already 30, which is just a depressing thought. But Bill, back to you, who's a tad more senior than myself. That ends the predictable part of the show. This is listen, we're all getting educated on this new era. I keep going back to the Tarvis Alford explanation in this. There used to be a time when after you committed somewhere, you were never supposed to take an official visit again. Tarvis Alford announced his commitment and then his 5 official visit destinations. So things have just gotten absolutely screwy. And the guys are doing this, I think, for 2 major reasons. One, the coaching upheaval to the point where they want to make sure that when they get there, they're playing for a guy they know and trust. And then the big matzo ball, the dough, the NIL, the big kahuna. Anyone who's heard the term deadlines make deals, who follows like contract negotiations, knows that you can think something's going some way up until the very last minute, but deadlines make deals. So, Bill, yesterday afternoon, I was enjoying a wonderful afternoon, and it got so much better because I saw a crystal ball roll right from your house to Columbus for Luke Wafle, the defensive end out of Hun, from the Hun School from the mean streets of Princeton, New Jersey. Thought we had him once. Then I thought Penn State was going to get him. Then I heard USC was going to get him. And then I see a crystal ball roll towards Ohio State, hence the title today with the brunch-like reference to his last name. Then as we assemble for the show this morning, Bill, you gave me a swift kick in the pants. And that's because overnight, deadlines make deals. So that's a long lead in. I tried to soak up some of the angst there, Bill. Please take it from there.
Well, let's go back a little bit. Luke Wafle made, official visits to Ohio State and USC and Penn State. He also made one to Florida, but they really haven't been a factor. At one point, I said I thought he'd go to either Penn State or Ohio State. But when he left his USC visit, which was this past weekend, they put a really good package together for him. And basically, when he left USC, he was going to go there. Ohio State, though, did not give up. They made another run at him. And yesterday, according to those around him, he was going to Ohio State. Now, you were not going to expect USC to just say, oh well. Not with a guy like Luke Wafle. And that's what they did. That's what, they didn't say, oh well, they got back in touch. And now, unfortunately for Ohio State fans, he's going to USC. Could something change again? I suppose it's possible, but I don't expect it, to be 100% honest. And I went ahead and I don't switch my crystal ball picks often, very seldom. But in this case, and with the way things are in this day and age of the NIL, things like this happen. And with what I'm told is a great package that USC has now redone. I think he's going to USC now. What I will say is what USC is doing over a long haul, I don't think is sustainable, but for the time being, that is the path that they're going.
I don't know the answer to this question. And I'm not saying Los Angeles is devoid of cash, but someone or a few people who really like USC football are really dipping into the bank account for this. Mark, your general impression of this, I know you love the new form.
Yeah, and we knew this was coming, and I think we all had our heels in the ground where players are simply going to get bought out from underneath you, and all recruiting rules of what used to sell. And I've been Debbie Downer about this. I feel like every time, like Dan threw this over to me, he's like, yep, I'm going to give it to Mark, and he's going to Debbie Down this. But yeah, that's what's so disappointing is Ohio State was like a casino made of gold. That building inside and the trophies and all the tradition and all the wins, it can all be negated by a couple movie stars who throw in a couple extra, thousands of dollars or whatever it may have been to make things irrationally go another way. So whatever rationale we've had in the past for predicting where kids are going to go, it's been destroyed. And, I've said this a couple of times, we're in an era now where we're in an NFL model era, and the money or a salary cap is out there, and how you allocate your money is out there. And I think what we're seeing right now is there are certain teams that will break the bank for one player, that will simply overpay, whether it's Brandon Baker or, these big time players where the normal going rate is X, but we need a player so bad and our fan base needs a player so bad that we're willing to go above that and risk all this funny money that it may not work out, but we're going to risk it to get this player. You see the Bengals and their NFL model, they just paid Burrow and Higgins and, Chase, and they can't sign the defensive end. Dan's familiar with the Cowboys model. I'm familiar with the Niners, where they thought they traded all their picks away for one quarterback, and then in the last pick of the draft they get a quarterback who's better. So I think you need to look at the NFL and their mistakes and where they've done well, and is buying one single player worth it and sacrificing your whole cap? Look at the NFL teams that have done that and track their success, or the teams that got their cap in trouble by doing that. And I think the point I'm trying to make is Ohio State may be smart not to just spend all their money on one good player and try to really get a base of players and look for the Brock Purdy's that come in, on basically a scholarship or low money and pan out in the end. But yeah, it stinks because we follow recruiting and we love Luke Wafle. He's one of those players. As soon as we got done watching it, you're like, oh boy, if you don't get this kid, it's going to sting. Now let's hopefully, if we didn't spend money on Luke Wafle, what does Ohio State have now? There you go. Yep. So we'll be able to get somebody else, and we'll probably be able to give them a little more to shore it up. But I think this new cycle is awful, and I think we're going to mistakes equal Bengals. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I'm looking at the comments. I don't know which model in the NFL has proved out to be the right way. All mid-range guys pay for stars. Dallas paid Dak, and I think they regret. You look at every scenario out there. I think that's how you got to kind of look at things as a college team these days.
The San Francisco 49ers are a really interesting test case in this, if you want to get nerded out, because Purdy just got paid, and we will see the NFL teams tend to make a run when their quarterback might be on his rookie contract, so you have all that other money to play with. When you sign your quarterback, that's one thing that will not happen in college, I don't think, where you have to give out X percent of the salary cap. And this is important. You're getting to the point now where college coaches, when they're being interviewed now, just say straight out salary cap and roster management.
Yep.
They don't even hide those terms anymore. I saw an interview with the Duke basketball coach yesterday, John Shire, and he was saying, it's financial now. It's roster management. It's, In basketball, I think it's a little bit easier because at that level, you're only recruiting a guy for 1 year. Now, with guys coming for 3 years and juggling money and everything like that, this is a hard job, man. If you look at who the salary cap specialists are in the NFL, they tend to be like accountants and lawyers and guys who just like football but are more, bookish types. Go ahead, Mark.
We all know who Vince Morrow is at Kentucky. He was the associate, assistant head coach, tight ends coach. When he took the new job at Louisville, did you see the title he got? Not a coach anymore. He's the general manager.
Yep.
Okay. Sure. So to your point, when you're being interviewed and when you're being asked about, hey, how do I handle, being a head coach in college football, a general manager and a capologist in these positions, and you see them, if you go to like support staff at Ohio State or support staff, you start seeing all these titles of, offensive personnel analyst and personnel director and general manager, and titles that mimic what NFL teams are doing. So that's the trend that's coming.
Here's good news. We have the best GM, Mark Pantoni. So he's basically been the GM and the title fit him rather than us having to fit someone into the title.
Yeah.
So by the way, who won the title? I think that was us. So I also want to say this. Let's get back to one thing here importantly. All that matters now is results. The whole kumbaya, all that stuff with kids and stuff like that, them days are done, okay? The idea of, hey, a kid come here and really work your hardest and work your way up the ladder. Once you start paying people, man, this is going to get worse and worse and worse. And I've told people this. When you're a sports writer coming up, they tell you this. High school kids, you're covering a game, you don't mention the cornerback when the wide receiver gets a touchdown, right? You don't even mention him. When it's a college, you can mention him, but you don't want to totally. When it's a pro, you hammer that guy for getting beat deep. You know why? Because we'd always be like, well, he's getting paid. He's a pro. He can handle it. Guess who's getting paid? Shoot, there are some states that are paying high school players now with NIL. You get beat deep, your name's going in the paper now. There's going to be a callous side to this. All right.
A couple other things. Just because somebody has a great offer doesn't mean the player always takes it. I mean, they may just really want to go to some place, like an Ohio State, for instance, for an offer that maybe is not on paper is good. That does happen. And maybe that happens with Luke, that he, in the end, he says, I really would rather go to Ohio State. But sometimes there is such a big difference that, somebody really wants to go over and beyond, that it's really, really hard to turn down. And I feel like that was a situation with McNutt last year. And I said that right away. I said that as soon as I heard about what was the situation, I said, that's basically a situation where it's impossible to turn down. And he didn't. He signed with Oregon. So I suppose it's possible. I just don't think it's likely in this case. I think that in Ohio State's case, and I think this is the case in all of football, most of football at least, the most important position on the field is the quarterback. And that's the way it is at Ohio State. And I think for good reason. And then they're not going to blow their entire way of doing things out of the water for one player. And I totally agree with that philosophy. If a player really wants to come to Ohio State, then he will go to Ohio State. They will put together a very good package. It may not be the very best. And then if that player wants to go to Ohio State, then he will. And again, in the case of Ohio State, who makes the most difference on the field? It is the quarterback. As good as Myles Garrett is, and he got a tremendous situation from the Cleveland Browns, as good as he is, if the Browns don't find a great quarterback that can get him there, Myles Garrett is not going to do that. They've got to have a quarterback. And I think that's the way it is really at all football.
Okay, great. There's lots to talk about here, but and I want to get to what happened at the camps and stuff, but this is hot stuff. Let me read you our next ad. And if you're getting stressed out about this, there's an easy way to deal with it. Cornbread hemp. America's first. Look, Mark just took one.
Saw that coming.
Listen. I only got a few tricks, and they just get covered in different clothing. America's first ever USDA organic THC gummy. I had a happy hour yesterday because of Bill's crystal ball. And now I'm finding out it may not be as mentally healthy as it should have been. But this is 1:1 THC to CBD ratio, 10 milligrams per gummy, which is just the right dose. And don't forget cornbread, no harsh solvents, petrochemicals, or industrial acids, no synthetic ingredients, and Farm Bill compliant and legal for adults over 21. You're looking for a healthier way to enjoy a carefree moment, you got to give cornbread hemp a try. 100% legal, and as a special offer for BM5 listeners, you can get 30% off your first order. Cornbreadhemp.com/Bucknuts. Promo code Bucknuts at checkout. Get 30% off, and cheers to a healthier happy hour. All right, Bill, I got some questions. Isn't it? So here's what I'm saying. And let's use Luke Wafle as the example. And I'm not casting aspersions here. I've never been offered the kind of money that I think he's being offered. So I can't totally say this, but let's go back in time. What if Ohio State had brought the Bosa brothers in and paid them nothing? Look how much money they have now. Do you think they would go back on that? Probably not. $2 million or $4 million or $5 million is a lot of money. Go look at how much money Nick Bosa and Joey Bosa have made. You're talking GDP of a small Caribbean nation now. You're no longer talking about short. I know people don't want to hear this, but the money you're talking about for NIL is short money. Now, it's incredible to talk about an 18-year-old and say short money. And I'm going to use an example here, and I hope they can handle it because I think they can. And I go back to the Devin Sanchez example. What Ohio State needs to do now more than anything is identify the guys that are both elite and understand the process that's short money. Now, I'm sure the Sanchez's have probably upped the auto game, okay, which is fine. But Devin Sanchez's goal is to be the best cornerback in the NFL, and you get paid generational wealth to do that. And guys from Ohio State have a proven track record to doing this. Go look at the guys who went to Ohio State and what their average salary is per position and almost every other school. I had this discussion with a former Michigan wide receiver, and I didn't say it at the time because I was trying to be cordial, and I regret it because he said, Michigan's here and Ohio State is here. And I said, I wanted to say Ohio State receiver salaries in the NFL here, Michigan receiver salaries in the NFL here. And you go to college to get paid. So, Bill, is it going to be possible for Ohio State to keep this up and evaluate at the level they've done? Or is this really going to damage their ability to win games? I get the sense you feel like they're doing it the right way and the results speak for themselves. But I go back to the Bosa brothers. Would they change for a couple $1 million at the time? Maybe. But they both could be the king of a small country right now. So I'm optimistic that Ohio State will keep it up. I'd like to get both your opinions on that. Or is the apple cart about to fall off the tracks?
Well, Ohio State is not in the same position as USC. Ryan Day and the Buckeyes just won a national championship. That's not the case at USC. And I was talking with somebody at camp yesterday, Ohio State's camp yesterday, about this. USC's got to do something to turn things around. Things have not gone like they expected with Lincoln Riley. Now, what is a better way, easier way to try to turn things around? Spend a little, not a little, well, in our, it's a lot of extra money now in the NIL, or watch Riley in the program not go like you wanted it to, and you've guaranteed Lincoln Riley a lot of money for a lot of years, and then you got to eat that. Ohio State's not in that position, not at all. So they, their way is the way of looking at it long term, because they don't need to look at it short term. Ryan Day is a national champion.
Marcus, your vibes?
I like the culture comments, and if it's not about money, don't come here or whatever, that type of stuff. But I think Luke Wafle, all things being equal, would be a Buckeye. I think that you can't say, oh, if this young man wants to take the money, he wasn't a Buckeye anyways. Well, yeah, we take him anyways. Okay, and this is big boy numbers, and this is more money. And I'd like all the people in the comments to be offered $500,000 or $2 million, and see how loyal they are to their beliefs and the things that they hold true in their lives. So this young man and all these young men are being put to the test with money and their morals and what's right and wrong, and where they feel in their heart. I mean, those things are all nuked by $1 million check. I used to really like this girl, but if someone says here's $1 million not to date her, I'll find another one. There's other girls, in other states that'll, probably be equal or better. So it's tough. And, I think what you don't want to do at Ohio State is ever pay a player so much that it's a bust. And that's coming, where you give a player $2 million and they can't get on the field. But I think the rub here is when you're looking at these national kids, there are 10 or 20 kids in the country that you're like, there's no way this kid fails. He'd literally have to develop a crystal meth problem tomorrow morning to take this off the rails. Okay. So, and I think on those safer bets, you're seeing these programs fire, because we haven't seen a Brandon Baker not work out, or the kid Jordan Seaton not work out, the kid that Texas got. I mean, they've all worked out and become starters. So there are 10 or 20 players that you have to make a decision on. Should we pay them this absurd amount and upset the balance of our team, where other players are going to look at them as the sacred cow that, hey, if they miss a workout or they show up late, we really can't do much to them because we're giving them, $4 million. And I don't want to use Jeremiah Smith as an example, but what if he starts showing up late to meetings and misses a practice? Like, how harshly do you judge that? Hey, you guys are giving me all this money. What are you going to do? Bench me now?
No.
Yeah, I know. So there could be some dilemmas with all that. And culture is the word I like, where we have the winning culture, we have the work culture, we have this balance where we're not going to overpay, and we're not going to, take the quick player over, a steady stream of players that, fit our mold. This is the stuff. This is interesting conversation. I don't know how the fans who are watching this feel, but this is the world we're in now. And these are the decisions on the table, not, how nice is the meeting room, or how many squat racks do you have in the weight room, and, how many square feet is those things used to be like, look how big our indoor facility is. And look at, that stuff's irrelevant. Not irrelevant, but
it's
lower than it used to be. It used to be everything.
As for the Jeremiah Smith comment, I'm from the Jimmy Johnson school of coaching, where you guys remember a guy named John Roper. He played at Texas A&M, and he was a big-time draft pick by the Bears. The Cowboys picked him up, and he fell asleep in a meeting, and Jimmy Johnson turned the lights on and cut him in front of everybody. And they asked him, what would you have done if Emmett fell asleep in the meeting, Emmett Smith? And he said, get him a pillow. So Jeremiah.
Yeah, and I mean,
you and me are good, dude.
Yeah, I hate to use that as an example.
You want to go see a movie instead of practice today? I don't suggest it, but tell me what good is playing, and maybe I'll join you. I mean, there's guys that are different, and then there are guys that are different, and then there are guys that are different. So
have we seen any of our guys on a boat with Cardi B and a pink substance during training? But
this is the point.
I mean, are we getting to that point where,
you say that in jest, though, Mark?
I know.
But the point is this: that's part of the evaluation process now.
Yeah.
You could gamble on a kid. I don't want to use this kid in vain, but remember Torrance Gibson, Bill? He was kind of a gamble. Torrance Gibson now would want $1 million, right, or a lot of money, and he'd be a real financial gamble. Back in the day, You could just roll the dice. If your strength guy and your butt-kicking offensive line coach can't get through to the kid, you run him. You can't do that anymore. There's a bill there. Now, some people have more money than others. But all right, Bill, we can talk about this.
The bottom line is, do you want to bet on yourself, so to speak, that, hey, I know I'm going to go to Ohio State, and I know I'm going to be the next Joey or Nick Bosa, or if you want to bet on yourself, then that's certainly your choice. Or do you want to take things as they are right now and say, and then, maybe you bet on yourself at a certain school too, the school that maybe doesn't have the reputation, I suppose. But again, the bottom line is, I think it's been proven out. Ohio State, rather than USC, is the school that has had the proven results over the last few years. Since we've had this NIL, Ohio State has had the proven results. They've got the national championship, and they've got a whole lot more wins than USC or just about any other school out there in the past 5 years.
Eddie Edwards, and NFL teams have detectives that monitor college players to make sure they don't draft a problem child. Oh, it's way more than that. And guess what? That's almost gotten to high schools. Go try and attend a public school that's won a lot of football games, and don't be a resident. You're going to have an ex-FBI agent parking his car in front of your house at 5 a.m. and making sure the mail goes to the right spot. That happens in high school now. In college, I got to believe there's some investigation going on into these dudes before you ante up that check. And you're definitely right on the pros. I interned for a professional team at one point in time and saw a pre-draft write-up on someone and found out some guy was an alcoholic. I didn't even know. They find out everything, especially now that everything's online. You can't get away with anything. All right.
And by the way, don't people, this may sound like a little doom and gloom. Getting Cincere Johnson, which like we talked about at the beginning, I still like Ohio State in that one. Getting Cincere Johnson is a big deal.
Yeah, we take that for, that's what I was trying to say earlier. We take that for granted because it's the pipeline. Go ahead, Mark.
And I hope we learned last year, don't beat up your offensive line coach when he doesn't get the player you want, because we already saw the comment that, hey, is this going to be Larry Johnson's fault because we didn't get Wafle? Absolutely not. Exactly.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely. Let's say it. Let's end it. Let's not talk like that anymore. These are money deals. Larry Johnson has nothing to do with how much money USC just pulled out of their wazoo in the middle of the night to give this kid. That's what this was based on, not, how Larry talks to the kid or how Larry hugged the kid or talked to his mom or, we learned that last year with the offensive line coach. He ended up being one of the best offensive line coaches in the country, and he was under assault for 4 or 5 months because Brandon Baker got bought and sent somewhere else. So let's put that to an end.
Man, that was a good comment, Mark. If we were going to clip something for the show, I might use that. All right, Bill. Good Lord. Did anything else go on at Ohio State this week? Tell me, here's what I'd like to hear from you, Bill.
No, nothing else going on. I'm taking the rest of the day off.
No, exactly. Well, you're a slacker. Slackers try to find pockets in the day to nap and eat candy. There were a lot of quarterbacks at Ohio State over the last few weeks. A lot. Guys who I would venture to say you probably had guys that'll be quarterbacking major NFL teams at some point. You know what I'm saying? Who jumped out to you the most, Bill? I know Brady Edmonds, Neiman Lawrence, Teddy Gerard yesterday, and then the list goes on and on. When you think back, when you guys, both of you maybe, when you think back the last few weeks, and we talk about quarterback you here, who jumps out to you, Bill?
Well, you named a number of those quarterbacks. I'm not sure you named the one that jumps out to me the most right now because he's the sure thing, so to speak. Brady Edmonds.
Yep.
I mean, I think Mark would agree. The ball gets there in a hurry, folks, when he throws it. And he's 6'5" and 215 pounds, and he's going to be 6'5", and he's going to be probably 235, 40 pounds. He, in my opinion, was extremely impressive. Now, there were some other really good ones too, from Derek Baker, he was outstanding. Champ Mons, wonderful Champ Mons. He
Greatest
was
name ever.
Yeah, great.
The fourth, by the way, and I looked it up, and
Yeah.
Wonder Mons was making a tackle on Greg Pruitt from the Browns in 1979. So he dropped the full, but he was Wonder Mons. I apologize. I interrupted Bill. God bless.
No, did somebody say that? I don't think they I don't think I've seen
They
that.
will. Don't worry.
But I don't mind if it's when you discretions or interruptions, when they're good, they're good. So
Any mention of Greg Pruitt, and Bill wants to order a hamburger with no mustards. Go ahead, Bill.
yeah, well, I talked about Edmonds and Baker and
Ty Snell.
Ty Snell, Mons, Neiman Lawrence, really good, and Teddy Gerard. If I had, it's like, picking from a whole bunch of great choices. But again, I'd probably go at the very top with Brady Edmonds. And I think if they could get, and it's possible, if they could get Teddy Gerard to join Brady Edmonds in that 2027 class, that's a grand slam.
Mark, before you go, Bill, you saw Teddy yesterday. You got to see him up close and personal. Of course, Teddy is the quarterback from North Cobb. He's actually just transferring to North Cobb from a private school down there, a smaller school, taking a step up. He's got offers aplenty. Can you tell us what you saw from him yesterday, just like physically, arm talent, what you thought of him when you chatted with him?
Well, it's kind of funny. When I first walked in, he was just beginning a game, and I don't know if everybody knows how 7-on-7 works, but they do a countdown, and if you get to a certain number, plays over, you're sacked, and that happened multiple times in the game I had just walked in to see Teddy Gerard in. And I was watching, I was saying, there's nobody open. He can throw the ball, but it's not going to be complete because those guys are not open. I mean, and I'm not trying to put down the people around him, but at that point, his receivers were just not open. And, sometimes you got to take a sack or you got to run for a first down. And in 7-on-7, you don't really run for first downs. So the clock ran out. But as the games proceeded, the receivers on his team were able to get open more and more, and he was on spot. He was firing balls in there. He was hitting long, deep balls with the perfect touch on them. He was throwing the ball to receivers that were relatively well covered, and he was connecting. He looked really, really good. And as the games went on, he just looked better and better. He was very good. He is, I think, a legitimate 6'3", and he's kind of along the lines of a Brady Edmonds. He's 6'3", but he looks like a thin 6'3". He's got a lot of room for growth and good growth, development of his body. I really liked him a lot. And make no mistake, Ohio State likes him a lot too. I was standing there, and Teddy was with his mom yesterday, and I was standing there, and guess who comes up and is introduced to Teddy Gerard? Pretty good football player, certain safety at Ohio State. Anybody want to guess on that one?
Downs.
Is it Ed Reed?
Caleb Downs is right. Caleb Downs is from Georgia too. Caleb Downs gets introduced to Teddy Gerard, and then out on the field, when Teddy Gerard goes out there with Caleb Downs and Billy Fessler, who do they get joined with? None other than Brian Hartline joins in and the discussion with them. And who comes after that? Mark Pantoni. It was a who's of people at Ohio State that Teddy Gerard and his mom were introduced to.
No charisma in that group, none whatsoever. Mark, your thoughts on the quarterbacks, and we will get out of here on that.
Bill, I'm going to need a little help. I'm looking under the 2027 offers, and there's only 4 quarterbacks offered. Who was the kid that was the number 1 quarterback in the class of 2027 that showed
Prunk?
up?
Was it Lucas Prunk?
No, he was from
Remember
Texas,
him?
I thought. But he was the
you're talking about the kid from Baton Rouge.
Yes, there we go.
Oh, Haven.
Yeah, there were some kids that Dan sparked my memory when he said future pros. When they offered him, and it was another 2027 quarterback, I thought to myself on the drive home, hold up, you got Brady Edmonds committed.
Right.
And he just camped 3 days in a row for you. On the fourth day, this guy shows up and you offer him. That sends a shot across the bow almost. Like, to me, in the world of football, where, hey, Brady, we like this guy too. Remember, there's no relaxing here. Like, you got to put your foot to the gas all the time. But I watched him and said, this is a future NFL quarterback.
Yeah. You're talking about Elijah Haven.
Okay, yeah. Wow, like, how do you not offer? And here's the other thing. Here's the out for Ohio State. If you knew you just watched, you have Peyton Manning committed, and you just watched Tom Brady work out, you still offer Tom Brady, because in 3 years you don't want to be the idiot that Ohio State never offered me when I was in high school. Well, because we had a quarterback committed and we didn't want to offend him, but we also don't want to not offer a future NFL draft pick that we know is a future NFL draft pick. Because so it was weird for me. Like, on one side, you have to do it because the kid's talent is there, but the other side, you're offending your guy. Or are you saying wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we like you better? So I drove home thinking about that for a little bit. Tavian St. Clair's brother, Rayne St. Clair, worked out. It was nice to see a younger version of him. I think some of the people around that thought he's a little more polished at the same age, but there were quarterbacks left and right. I can't believe all the 2028 kids that have showed up. The 2029 kid that was there that looked like,
Nice Snell.
Yeah, I mean, it really, if there was one position, and I spent a lot of time watching quarterbacks this cycle, and there were a lot of guys to watch. Very impressive.
Rumor has it young DJ Porter was in the first group too, so we will have to keep an eye on the phenom from the Canfield, Youngstown area. William, let's wrap up the show here. What's happening today? Can you make 100% predictions on everything that will happen in recruiting in the next 8 hours, please?
Yeah, and right after that, I'm going to Vegas.
Do it. I'm with you. I love me some Vegas.
Not that I'm a betting man, because I'm not, but before that gets put on the internet. Today is Cincere Johnson at noon.
Right on.
Expecting Wafle to make his announcement today, but again, in recruiting, I like to never say never. And with the way things have gone on that one, again, I if he does make that announcement today, I expect that to be USC. And then, of course, we've got the official visit weekend coming up. That certainly should not be forgotten, and it's going to be a big one. Right now, I look for 15 to 17 guys making official visits to Ohio State this weekend, but that's subject to change. We talked about this, I think it was on Tuesday, that Tyler Atkinson not visiting Ohio State this weekend. He's visiting Texas. And that's why I always say, especially with camps, take it with a grain of salt with who's going to be there. But that's to some extent true with official visits. Kids change their minds at the last minute and they decide to go elsewhere at times. But as of right now, I look for 15 to 17 guys to make official visits to Ohio State this weekend, and just a couple names off the top. And this is just a couple names off the top. I'll be having more on this later today, tomorrow, that type of thing on Bucknuts. But Braylon Womack and Derek Cooper, I do think that those visits are not going to change. They will be at Ohio State. I certainly expect them to be at Ohio State this weekend. And by the way, a lot of Ohio State commitments are making their official visits this weekend too. And gosh, we could go on and on. I got to slow this in there real quick. When I was at the Woody Hayes yesterday, speaking of commitments, guess which commitments were in the Woody Hayes working out? None other than a couple of very talented offensive linemen, Maxwell Riley and Sam Greer. I put this on our thread yesterday morning. We're working out with Tyler Bowen in the Woody Hayes facility. And that is great to see, because as somebody put, after I put it on our camp thread, as somebody put right away, that could be the left side of the Ohio State offensive line in a few years.
So you're in an airport and you're John Bosa, and someone says, well, what do your kids do? I always thought Archie Manning was the guy you never wanted to meet. And he'd be like, you'd be talking about your kids. And he'd be like, oh, both my kids were the first pick in the draft. How about you? Joey Bosa career earnings in NFL so far, 143, Nick 101. And guess who's going to finish on top? It's Nick. I don't think those guys regret coming to Ohio State or playing for Larry, et cetera. And for those of you on their Christmas list, congratulations. Good Lord. All right. Great show for you guys today. I hope. Tack it, Curtis. You guys would if you guys could hear the off, I'm not even going there. Not even going there. Going to finish on a high note. All right. Appreciate you guys stopping by. Went a little later than usual, but today was hot and heavy. Don't forget, Cincere Johnson is committing at noon. And after that, we head into the twilight zone. For those of you who made it to here, have a good one. Nutters of Buck.